Okay, this is going to be a roller coaster of a read, so just a heads up, prepare yourself. I've been married to Mary for 5 wonderful years now. We met back in college, and I'll admit, I was her first boyfriend. She came from a very traditional family, so she didn't have much opportunity to date or explore relationships like a lot of other people did. When we first met in college, we started off as friends, but eventually we developed feelings for each other and fell in love. From the moment I met her, I thought she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, both inside and out, and I knew she was the one for me. I was so lucky that she felt the same way. After several years of being together, we decided to marry once we graduated and I had a stable job to support us. Mary is a stay-at-home wife and we don't have any children. She's also a talented artist and every now and then she gets some freelance work. But for the most part, she prefers not to have a full-time job, so I've always been the one bringing in the steady income. For the longest time, I thought our marriage was perfect. We didn't argue much. We each had our own hobbies and personal space. We made it a point to have a date night every Friday, but looking back now, I realize I was so wrapped up in my love for her that I didn't pay attention to the red flags that were there all along. At the start of this year, I came home from one of my work trips earlier than usual. I wanted to surprise Mary and brought her some flowers, thinking it would be a nice gesture. But when I walked into the house, I was completely blindsided. The living room was a mess with clothes scattered all over the floor and the sofa. But what really shocked me were the noises coming from upstairs, moaning, unmistakable sounds of pleasure. It was my wife. I could hear it clearly. I froze, my heart sinking in my chest, and I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My mind went blank and I felt numb all over. It was like my heart shattered in a million pieces all at once. I walked upstairs slowly, still trying to process what I was hearing, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. My wife was in bed with another man, but it wasn't just any man. It was my stepbrother in my bed, in our house. I couldn't believe my eyes. The two of them were tangled up together, completely lost in their own world, hardly even noticing me standing there. The shock hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't breathe. I turned around immediately and went downstairs, grabbed my suitcase and left without making a noise. I didn't know where to go or what to do. I was in so much pain, so utterly heartbroken that I couldn't think straight. My mind was spinning and all I wanted was to escape from the nightmare I had just walked in on. I ended up at the nearest bar and decided to drown my sorrows in alcohol. The pain was unbearable. The only thing I could think to do was to keep drinking until it all numbed. I stayed at a motel that night, struggling to gather the courage to even think about going back home. I couldn't bring myself to face that reality just yet. The next day, as usual, Mary called to check in on me, thinking I was still out of town, since I hadn't told her I had returned. I asked her what she'd been up to the night before, and she told me that she had stayed home, reading a book and having a glass of wine. She said it so casually, with no hesitation, like there was no weight to her words at all. It was terrifying how easily she lied. There was no guilt in her voice, no sense of remorse. It felt like she had no care in the world, and that made everything even harder to process. For the next few days, I stayed away from home. I called in sick to work and just remained at the motel. I continued to lie to Mary, telling her that I was still out of the city. I wasn't ready to face her yet, and my mind was all over the place. The thought of what had happened, of what she had done with my stepbrother, kept playing over and over in my head. The very same stepbrother who had tormented me all my life. Mary knew about that history. She knew everything. To give some context, my mom passed away when I was only 14 after a long battle with cancer. It was a devastating time and I had to adjust to life without her. After a while, my dad, met Ava, a woman who had also lost her partner, and they got married. Ava had a son, Jason, who would soon become my stepbrother. From the start, Jason was a bully, constantly making my life harder, especially during those tough years. And now, somehow, he was in my bed with my wife. The betrayal felt even deeper, knowing how much history there was with him. It was like all my worst fears were coming true, and I couldn't escape it. From the very beginning, Ava and Jason never liked me. They wanted my dad all to themselves, and I always felt like I was an outsider in my own home. Jason had never really had a father figure in his life, and I think Ava felt that he deserved more of that special father-son time with just my dad. So she would constantly try to exclude me from family events, make me feel like I didn't belong. If Jason and I ever fought, she would always blow things out of proportion and somehow twist it to make it seem like I was the one causing problems. She'd make it seem like I was the one making Jason feel unaccepted or like I didn't care about him being a part of the family. Of course, my dad would always take her side and I'd end up getting scolded for misbehaving. This would lead to a lot of arguments between my dad and me because from my perspective, he never really listened to my side of things. I felt misunderstood and like he was blindly siding with Ava and Jason. Eventually, after months of tension, my dad forced me to go to therapy. At first, I wasn't sure it would help, but I found a therapist who actually understood me. He wasn't just focused on fixing me, but on helping my dad understand me better too. The therapist suggested that my dad join the sessions, and I have to admit that was a turning point. It wasn't an easy process, but during those sessions, my dad started to see things from my point of view. He began to understand how Ava and Jason's behavior had affected me, and he started being more open-minded. He didn't just take their side without question anymore. This change, however, really upset Ava. She could no longer manipulate my dad the way she had been. She couldn't exclude me from things or control the narrative anymore. It was as if she had lost her power, and I know it frustrated her, but for me, it was a huge relief to finally have my dad on my side, to finally feel like he was listening to me and understanding what I had been through. It was the first time in a long time that I felt like I had a voice in the family. This is when she and Jason changed their strategy and started to bully me whenever Dad was not around to protect me. They would gang up and tease me about how I was a motherless child, constantly reminding me that I had lost my mom when I was just a kid. It felt like they were trying to chip away at any sense of self-worth I had left. They'd also mock my dad's relationship with my mom, saying he never truly loved her and how Ava was a better partner. Jason would often say things like he was a better son to my dad than I ever could be. He'd go out of his way to do everything my dad wanted, trying to prove how much better he was by being the perfect son. But it never worked. No matter how hard he tried, he didn't get the validation he was chasing from my dad. It was almost sad to watch, but at the same time, it didn't stop him from continuing his attempts. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided to move out. It was a big step for me, but I knew it was necessary to build my own life and get away from the toxic environment. Over the years, I've managed to create a stable and successful life for myself. I hold a pretty important position in my company now, and I earn well enough to take care of myself and Mary. My dad is proud of me, which I'm grateful for. And looking back, it's been a journey of ups and downs, but I've worked hard to get where I am. In contrast, Jason's life hasn't really panned out the same way. As far as I know, he was working as a bartender and had been stuck in a cycle of on-again, off-again relationships with his ex. He never seemed to make much progress, and I honestly didn't think much about him anymore. But then out of nowhere, I found out that he and Mary were sleeping together. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that something like this would happen. It felt like a sick joke, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. This is why I was absolutely furious at Mary. She knew what I had gone through with Ava and Jason, how they had treated me, how they had bullied me for years, and yet she still chose to betray me with Jason. The betrayal felt like a slap in the face, especially after everything I had put up with from my family. It was something I couldn't forgive. I couldn't just move past it or pretend like everything was fine. I knew I needed to take action, so after a lot of thinking, I made up my mind. I decided to meet with a lawyer and find out what my options were. After discussing things with the lawyer, it became clear that getting a divorce was the best route for me, but I knew I needed to protect my assets first. I couldn't let her take advantage of me any more than she already had. I decided to hire a private investigator to gather evidence that I could use during the divorce. I wanted to be prepared, and I knew I couldn't confront her just yet. For now, I decided to act like I didn't know anything. I went back home, pretended like everything was normal, like nothing had changed. For weeks, this PI had been following Mary, gathering information on her every move. And what I learned was shocking, far beyond anything I could have imagined. Not only was Mary sleeping with Jason, but she had been involved with multiple men. The evidence the private investigator provided me was gut-wrenching. It was hard to look at the pictures, honestly. Mary had been having affairs with her male gym trainer and, shockingly, one of her artist friends, who was a woman. I never imagined that my wife was leading such an adventurous double life, sneaking around behind my back with so many people. I was consumed by anger and betrayal. The way Mary had been sneaking around behind my back with so many people made me feel worthless and deceived, and I wanted her to feel that same sting, that same pain. I would divorce her, but I wasn't just going to let her walk away without consequences. I wanted to expose her for what she had done, humiliate her in front of everyone, and make her feel every bit of the heartbreak I had been carrying. With our wedding anniversary coming up this week, I saw the perfect opportunity. I booked a venue for the event, making sure to invite all of her close family and friends, as well as my own. Even Ava and Jason were invited. I had everything planned out. I would wait until after dinner, and then I would drop the bomb on her. I would reveal everything, expose her lies, watch her world crumble. But until then, I had to pretend everything was fine, like nothing had changed. Even though every part of me wanted to scream. However, in the middle of our dinner, Jason suddenly stood up and clinked his glass, making everyone pause and look at him. For a second, I was enraged seeing his face. He clearly looked like he was going to give a speech for us, a toast to the 5 years of marriage Mary and I had shared. With a smirk on his face, he said, "Wow, who would have ever thought you and Mary would last for 5 years? When you first brought Mary over and introduced her to us, I thought no way someone like you could have pulled someone like her. I mean, just look at her. She's too good for you, man." Jason smirked as he delivered those words, and I couldn't help but notice that his mother, Ava, was enjoying the moment a little too much. She was practically basking in the discomfort, like she was relishing every second of his taunting. The guests around us laughed, probably thinking Jason was just pulling my leg, trying to make a joke or tease me, but Mary, her face said it all. She was furious, her expression tightening as she frantically gestured for him to stop and sit back down. I could tell she didn't expect him to pull something like this. It was clear she was just as caught off guard as I was. But Jason wasn't done. He leaned into the moment, his voice growing more brazen as he said, "I could never digest how you ended up with Mary when I always thought it should have been me." He paused for effect, making sure everyone was listening. Then he dropped the bombshell that I wasn't prepared for. "For years, I've tried to pursue her. I guess Mary finally saw that I was better than you, because guess what, bro? She's been sleeping with me all this time." The entire venue gasped. It was like time stood still. I could hear the shocked murmurs spread across the room, and when I glanced at Mary, her face had drained of all color. She looked like she was about to collapse. Her mouth moved, but she couldn't form any words. She was caught completely off guard, and at that moment, the mask of the perfect couple we had been trying to portray came crashing down. My dad looked back and forth between Jason and me, his face frozen, unsure of whether he had just witnessed a prank or whether this was, in fact, the painful truth. Jason, with no remorse, turned his attention back to Mary and mockingly apologized for revealing their secret. He continued telling the entire room how hard it had been for him to keep this quiet, while Mary and I pretended to be this happy, perfect couple celebrating our wedding anniversary like everything was fine. "You guys act like you're living the dream," Jason sneered. "Like all of this is real, when in reality she doesn't even love you anymore, bro." The way he said it, it was like he was savoring every second of this twisted reveal. I felt humiliated and exposed, but at the same time there was this sense of clarity. Everything I had been holding in, all the anger and pain from the past weeks, was finally coming to light. And I knew then that it was time. The moment of revenge had arrived. Jason didn't stop there. He went on to say how he had finally proven that he was better than me, and how sleeping with Mary had been one of the best decisions of his life. He actually chuckled and looked at her, raising his glass to toast. "She's the best sleigh I've ever had." Mary's face turned a deep shade of red with anger, and she shouted at Jason to shut up. She then turned to me and claimed that it was all a lie, that Jason was probably just drunk and making things up. By now, people had started whispering among themselves, their eyes darting from Jason to me, to Mary. The whole room was on edge. My dad, who had been silent until now, furiously confronted Jason, demanding answers. Mary's parents, too, were clearly upset, leaning in close to Mary and asking what the hell was going on. It was chaos, and in that moment I knew this was my chance to end it all, to finally get my truth out there. I stood up, and without hesitation I spoke loudly. "Well, just to confirm to everyone here, Jason is in fact speaking the truth. He and Mary have been sleeping with each other for a while now." The room went dead silent. Mary's face was a mix of shock and horror, and I could see it. She thought I was still playing the fool, pretending everything was fine, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it anymore. I continued, making sure everyone heard me. "I've known about this affair for months, and Jason, just so you know, you are not the only person Mary has been sleeping with." I watched Jason's smirk vanish as his face fell. He was no longer confident. He stared at me, trying to process what I had just said. His eyes flicked between me and Mary as I continued to tell the room the full truth. My wife had been involved with not just Jason, but 2 other people. Jason wasn't her only affair partner. Mary, now desperate, tried to defend herself. She shouted at me, claiming that I had no right to defame her and that I was lying, and I needed to stop spreading these false accusations. Then she went on to claim that Jason and I were probably working together to bring her down. So I pulled out the photos on my phone and passed the phone around so everyone could see for themselves what Mary had been doing behind my back. When Jason saw the pictures, he looked like he was about to break down in front of everyone. Mary, on the other hand, looked like she wanted to vanish into the ground. Her face went pale, and I could see the shame and horror in her eyes as she realized that she couldn't escape from this horror. Her parents, who had been so confused and angry just moments before, now looked downright furious with her. It was clear they had no idea what kind of person their daughter had become. I continued speaking, making sure everyone knew what was really going on. "I organized this wedding anniversary," I said loudly, "just so I could expose Mary for the lies and betrayals she's been hiding. I had already planned to give her the divorce papers tonight, but I'm glad that Jason decided to expose himself first." I let the sarcasm drip in my voice as I thanked Jason. "Thank you, Jason, for showing me exactly how much better I deserve than her. You've made this so much easier." I turned to Mary, who was still in shock, still trying to process everything that had just happened. I pulled out the divorce papers I'd been hiding from her. Her eyes widened in disbelief as I handed them over. "Here you go, Mary," I said coldly. "You are a liar and a cheater, and I'm done with you." She couldn't believe it. I could see it in her eyes. She thought this was just a nightmare she would wake up from. But there was no waking up from this. It was done. It was over. And in that moment, I finally felt a sense of relief, knowing I was no longer tangled up in the lies she had spun. The truth had come out, and there was no going back for either of us. At this point, Jason was having a full meltdown because of Mary. He screamed at her, demanding to know if everything I had said and shown was true. He came up to her, shaking and crying, and yelled about how she had promised him that he was the only one for her. It was painful to watch him crumble like that, but he deserved to see the truth. Even if it hurt him, he had hurt me too. In the end, Mary fled the scene, her face red with embarrassment and anger. As she rushed out, she kept repeating to everyone how I had embarrassed her in front of everyone, and that I should have given her a chance to explain in private. But there was no explanation that could justify what she had done. No excuse could erase the lies and betrayals. After Mary ran off, her parents apologized to me, each of them telling me how sorry they were for what their daughter had done to me. It wasn't enough to undo the hurt, but it was something. My dad, though, was furious at Jason. He pulled me aside later and gave me a tight hug, assuring me that he was disgusted by Jason's behavior. I could see the anger in his eyes and knew that my stepbrother was in trouble now. Ever since the party, things have been a mess. Mary's been hiding out at one of her friends' places, too humiliated to return home. Every day, without fail, she texts me, complaining about how I exposed her for no reason. She claims I've ruined her life and that everyone now has the wrong impression of her. She says her parents are threatening to cut her off if she doesn't make things right with me. Honestly, I can't bring myself to care for her. She made her choices and now she has to live with the consequences. AITA here for exposing Mary this way? Update 1. First off, I want to make it clear that I am absolutely not getting back with Mary. That chapter of my life is closed for good. No matter what she says or her parents tried to guilt me, I want nothing more to do with her. The way she betrayed me, the lies she told, it's all too much for me to ever trust her again. I've already made it clear to her that she needs to pack up her things and move out as soon as possible. I'm giving her 1 week to get everything together and leave. If she doesn't, then I'll be the one moving her stuff to the street and she'll have to come pick it up. I don't care if it's harsh. She's the one who betrayed me, and now she's going to deal with the consequences. I'm guessing she won't have a choice but to show up and start packing. There's no way she can just disappear without facing the reality of the situation. As for Ava, I know people are wondering how she reacted when Jason admitted to sleeping with Mary. Honestly, she didn't look that shocked at all. I can't tell if she's just good at hiding her emotions or if she has some idea about his affair already. I mean, maybe she had some suspicion or inkling about what was going on between them, but I can't say that for sure. Update 2. After everything that happened, my dad and I had a long conversation about the whole situation. Jason has completely crossed the line, and my dad is really upset that his own son could do something like this to me. He feels betrayed too, because Jason had essentially stabbed me in the back in the worst possible way. But Ava, of course, is trying to protect Jason. She's been defending him non-stop, saying that Jason fell in love with Mary and that it wasn't really anyone's fault. She keeps trying to soften the situation like it's some kind of Romeo and Juliet type of thing, where feelings just get in the way of good judgment. However, my dad isn't having any of that, though. He's made it clear that no matter how in love Jason thought he was, there was no excuse for what he did. As for Jason, I honestly don't know what consequences he's going to face for his actions. It's hard to say where this will go, but one thing I'm sure of is that the truth is finally out there. People can no longer pretend like he's some innocent guy who got caught up in a bad situation. His true colors have shown, and now everyone knows what he did. I'm glad that the truth is no longer hidden and relieved that my dad is on my side. My friends and family are currently helping me find the best divorce lawyers in town to handle my case. Update 3. Jason is somehow trying to turn the tables and make me the villain in all of this. Ever since the party, he's been more angry and upset about being betrayed and cheated on than I am, which is beyond ironic when you think about it. After all, he's the one who slept with my wife, and now he's the one acting like he's the victim. The best thing, no one is taking his side. Jason's been reaching out to me for days, trying to get me to sympathize with him, but I've been ignoring him. Today, he actually showed up at my doorstep thinking that he could guilt trip me or get some kind of support. He started yelling at me, claiming I betrayed him. He said that it was my responsibility to warn him about Mary before he went ahead and made his big announcement at my wedding anniversary. He seriously said that I should have stepped in and told him about the affair before he made a fool of himself. Like, what was I supposed to do? Say, hey, Jason, by the way, my wife is also sleeping with other people. It doesn't work like that. I pointed out to him that it was he who stood up in front of everyone and announced that he'd been sleeping with my wife. I told him straight up that it was his choice to betray me by doing that, and it was he who had crossed the line with me in the first place. I was honest with him and told him just how much it hurt when I walked in and saw them together, but honestly, I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction seeing how quickly his world was crumbling. Served him right. He really thought he was the only one for Mary. Please. Then Jason told me that my dad had cut him off financially. Apparently he's on his own now and he's struggling, and of course he had the audacity to ask me for help with some bills because he was short on cash. I couldn't believe it. After everything, he thought I would be the one to bail him out? I just laughed in his face and told him to get out of my house. I told him if he needed money, he could go begging to Mary or maybe his mom. I'm done with him. He's no longer my family in my eyes. Jason tried to argue, but at that point, I'd had enough. I wasn't going to let him guilt trip me into anything. I told him that if he didn't leave, I would call the cops on him. I know he has a record, and last thing he needed was to make things worse for himself. That was the only way I could get him to back off. He knew I wasn't bluffing, so he had no choice but to leave. It was honestly a relief to see him go, and I didn't even feel bad about it. He's made his bed, and now he can lie in it.